With me now, Executive Daniel Turner. Daniel, good to see you.
Thanks for having me on, Liz.
All right, Daniel, what Bernie Sanders said here should be headlining across all media outlets, no matter your political persuasion, because what the socialist senator is suggesting is eugenics. He's suggesting that we, the American taxpayer, be forced by our government to pay for abortions to kill brown babies in foreign nations so that Bernie Sanders can justify his own enormous carbon footprint here in the United States.
I didn't think they could sink any lower as a party on this issue. I watched all 7 hours. It's part of my job. And I rolled my eyes at certain things and laughed and was frustrated at the lies about fracking, about the hyperbole, about the climate crisis, and the real lack of science, math, physics, etc. But this line was absolutely horrifying. If you and your great audience remember, a couple months ago, President Trump made a comment about why do we have immigrants from these S-hole countries coming to, and the media went bananas. How dare he talk about third world countries like that? Here is a man who is running for president who is saying, let's just abort their children. And he has gotten no pushback from the mainstream media that as a policy to fight climate change, Americans, taxpayer dollars, will abort the children in poor countries. I do not understand how you and I are the only ones having this conversation with our jaws on the ground.
No, because that's how you describe that is exactly how I received this. When I saw this for the first time, and my condolences to you, by the way, for watching all 7 hours of that marathon last night. But my jaw did drop when I heard this. I thought, surely this is disqualifying for Bernie Sanders. There are not Democratic voters out there who are going to vote for a man who's advocating that we fund abortion because of climate change in foreign countries, no less. And yet we hear no pushback from the pundits, no pushback from elected representatives, no pushback even from the other Democratic 2020 presidential contenders saying that they disagree with that or that it's abhorrent or disgusting. Nothing of the kind. Daniel, this is the truth about the Democrats' climate change agenda. We heard it last night. They want complete control of our lives, of our economy, and of our country, and they want that control to be funded by us.
Exactly, and this is why the chairman of the Democrat National Committee, Tom Perez, has been fighting to keep a climate debate out of the primaries. And the reason why is this. Right now, the Democrat voters are on a date. And on your first date, you don't let out all the crazy, right? No one who goes on a first date lets you know all your little quirks and you sleep with the teddy bear or you're afraid of the dark. You hide all that stuff. Right? On the first date with the Democrat Party, they are revealing all of their crazy. And the average American who watched, and let's be realistic, no one watched last night. I did, and I was a third of the viewers. But as they hear these lessons, they say, what type of party is this? What type of candidate is talking about straws and steaks and cars and all the consumer goods that it means to be free, happy, prosperous people? All of these things are being banned. They're all talked about with disdain. They're talked about with a sense of shame. The pettiness of these people and overall the anger of these people. This was 7 hours of gloom, of despair, of anger, of hostility. They are not a party of joy, optimism, American spirit, patriotism. I do not know who was attracted enough to go on a second date with this band of lunatics.
Right, and they're also not a party of science. And that's what I want to talk about before we get to the end of this segment. I want to debunk some of the things that they're saying. Elizabeth Warren claims that she has a, quote, aggressive plan to reduce our nation's carbon footprint. She says no new buildings with a carbon footprint by 2028. By 2030, the same thing for cars and trucks. By 2035, the same thing for our electricity generation. Daniel, is that realistic? How would that be done?
There is yet to be a way to forge steel without burning coal. They have been trying for years, scientists and manufacturers, to have carbon-free steel. We have not discovered it. How are you going to build any building with steel? Where are you going to forge the steel without coal? How are you going to put up a windmill, which is 900 tons per wind turbine of steel without coal? So when they say things like we are going to ban coal, but we are going to have carbon-free economy, it is just technologically and physically, if that's a word, absolutely impossible. It is chemically impossible. Photosynthesis has gone out the window when it comes to what happens with agriculture, the crop cycle. To hear Andrew Yang say that as president, he will teach farmers about crop rotation. Is there a more egotistical DC statement in the world than some Yahoo thinking from the Oval Office he's going to tell farmers about crop rotation? It was 7 hours of absolute embarrassment, and then Bernie's low point of just moral depravity. What a weird night. What a sad chapter for the party of JFK. Sad, sad day.
It is hardly recognizable anymore. They don't even seem like they hold the same values. Talk to me, too, before we run out of time, talk to me about fracking. There were multiple candidates last night who said that they would ban fracking on federal land. And then Kamala Harris, as you heard in that clip, insinuated that there would be additional legislation down the road, which she insinuated that would be related to fracking on private lands as well.
Yeah, we have close to 2 million fracked wells right now in America, and just think of that. And if there were these scores of people in communities who are suffering from water and air conditions, CNN would have had this town hall in their neighborhood rather than have it in New York. So where are these communities? Cory Booker said there are millions of Americans right now who, because of fracking, don't have clean water. Show me one. That's all I'm asking for. Show me one of these people. So the lies around fracking are insane. If we banned fracking on day one, the price of oil and gas would skyrocket, let alone the fact that millions of people would lose their job. The prices would skyrocket, which means food prices, all consumer good prices would skyrocket, transportation prices would skyrocket, and the economy would collapse. This is where there was no pushback from the CNN moderator to say, if you ban fracking on day one, what happens to gas prices? Instead, they all just got applause lines and patted themselves on the back for being the party of the dumb.
Right, for virtue signaling. It was 7 hours of virtue signaling. Politicians who fly private jets lecturing us on eating meat and using plastic straws. That part obviously is ridiculous. But the serious part of this, too, is exactly what you just said about the economy. If any, let alone a combination of these policies were imposed on the American people, it would destroy our way of life. I'm not talking about destroying our eating habits. I'm not talking about destroying what type of straw we use. I'm talking about jobs. I'm talking about people's livelihoods. I'm talking about people's freedom to determine the course of their own lives. I'm talking about government being in control of everything, industries collapsing, the prices on consumer goods skyrocketing so that low-income people have a harder time making ends meet and feeding their families. This would cause the destruction of our economy. And the only answer to this from the Democrats is we can have it both ways. We can have a good economy and an environmentally friendly country, but they don't ever answer the question, how do we make that work?
Exactly, and they are not held to any of the rigors of science, of math, of physics that most thinking people are. And you're right, this would be an absolute economic collapse for America when you look at how we just trade in our economy, how we ship goods, how we survive as a nation, as a people. It was really shameful to see the lack of intellect, the lack of just high school science during this entire conversation. And they didn't even talk about things like China and India, which are the biggest polluters in the world. They didn't talk about things like the airline industry, which would obviously be made illegal in 2030. They glossed over so many important details, all, as you just very well said, to virtue signal. And that's why CNN needed a controlled audience in New York City with a bunch of crazy liberals, because the average American is not going to buy this nonsense. And they're angry.
And we know, by the way, that these candidates were telling lies. Kamala Harris, I assume it was her team, tweeted during this town hall, she said, if Republicans continue to block progress, I'll get rid of the filibuster to pass a Green New Deal. She had a chance. Democrats had a chance to vote on the Green New Deal, and they either voted present, as I believe Kamala Harris did, or they voted no because they claimed Republicans were playing games. They had the opportunity to vote for this, and they chose not to do it. That's all you need to know about this. Daniel, thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it.